What if I honestly told you you could experience a transformational shift in your life? And the only part of the bargain that you have to live up to is being willing to accept some subtle changes within your mindset and the framework of how you look at life each and every day. That's right. You have all the tools in your toolbox in order to prepare yourself to live your best life. And according to award-winning life coach and author Colleen Avis, the power to make the shift in our life to live the life that we want to live is within our fingertips. We just have to make the decision that we want to take the leap and invest in ourselves. She spent the better part of the last decade guiding her clients to love the spaces they live in, whether in their mind, body, or in their home. She embraces the whole person and believes that all spaces that we occupy are beautifully intertwined. She takes a holistic approach to healing, growth, and transformation. She offers her clients a space of no judgment and an informed perspective on how they can grow as an individual person to arrive more present in their lives and for the people they hold the closest. Avis and I had a wide-ranging conversation about the healing process, achieving prosperity, and living your best life, and providing a roadmap in order to accomplish that with no strings attached. So get prepared with a notebook, a pen, and a listening ear, because Avis provides some helpful information for all of us to improve the quality of our life and encouraging us to live our best life by maximizing our full potential by embracing our whole selves. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, Colleen, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn how to help people maximize the fullest extent of their life. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm really excited to have this open and fun, vulnerable conversation.
Absolutely. And I know that you're on a mission, and you co-created a guide to support others to realize their own best healers and their own best healing journey and having the wisdom to heal. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
Yeah, so it really is important to me that people can see deeply into themselves in a way that feels supportive for them living their best lives. I really believe we all have the right to follow the fun, and yet in the world today, so many of us forget the fun part, forget the follow part, and are kind of being dragged around through our daily activities. And so my coaching business and my mindfulness guide business are really about helping people see their inner wisdom, helping them kind of turn the dimmer on the light that's already within them up a little bit, if not a lot. And I get the pleasure of co-creating that with people. I don't think I have the answers for people. I do think I have a few ways to help them create their own answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you work with people to create their best impact and sort of their shift in thinking about their lives to create their greatest impact and having them really live the life they want to live. So let's dive into how you help people determine how best to create the greatest impact they can have on their lives.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. I learned it myself. Let me rephrase that. I began learning it, and I'm continually on a journey about learning that for myself right now. But I do use an approach that I think is really important, and it's about getting to the core of who you are. So understanding not just, oh, this is a problem that I'm having, and let's see if we can find a way to fix it. Rather, what's really at the core? What's really at the root? Because oftentimes when people come and they're stuck in a behavior or they're feeling fearful or they're not happy with the relationship they're in, it's not something that they can do to actually just make some daily changes and shifts that will kind of band-aid that problem. It's more about looking deeply at like, what is that that's creating you feeling a certain way? And so I spend a lot of time with my clients and people I get to talk to like this, trying to help them understand what do they really want, right? Like, what is their purpose? Why are they here? What core values really feed them so that they stop procrastinating, they stop seeing things as overwhelming, and that we can start breaking things down so that they're a little bit smaller bite sizes for creating solutions for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Colin, I wanted to dive into the concept of resilience with you this morning. As you know, I was born with a cerebral palsy. What you may not know is that at 9 years old, Colleen, I was told by my physician that I wouldn't be able to walk for the rest of my life. And at that point, I had a decision to make on how I was going to live the rest of my life. And I'll tell you, the way I found out was when my last surgery was completed, Colleen. The doctor who had performed my surgeries had put myself and my parents in a conference room at the hospital, and he said to me that I wouldn't be, my last surgery was a success, but unfortunately I wouldn't be able to walk for the rest of my life. So the next day, I had to go back to school, and anybody who listens to this podcast will know the story, but I had to go back to school the next day, and I credit my middle school principal at the time. Her name was Dr. Carol Crowley, and she had everyone in her office who was assigned to my file in her office the next day, from teachers to therapists to social workers, and she had a big space in the middle of her office for my wheelchair. And I went through the story of what my doctor had said the previous day, and she had already knew the story, but it was a cathartic experience for me personally to get it out. But at the end of it, she looked at me and she said, "You have a decision to make, because the only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you place on yourself." So I'm curious, when you look at the concept of resilience, what do you think of personally?
Well, first of all, how amazing. And thank you for sharing that with me. I did not know all those details about you. And it makes me even more excited to be here with you because you hit the nail on the head. Like, we have a choice. Most of the time, there are some examples where I think I just recently came back from a trip to India where I was working with young girls who are survivors of human trafficking. And there are some situations where choice might not be a freedom that everyone has. And that was a learning for me. Okay. So I just want to be mindful of saying that. But I really think if, for the most part, choice and being able to look at ourselves with opportunity and seeing what most of us might see as a pothole, like, oh God, this is a problem, being able to pull back and look at it from a different perspective allows us potentially see an opportunity. And I think that is truly a piece of resilience, right? The ability to like stop, look at something that could be, in your case, very specifically, have a drastic effect on your life and the way that you can go about living your life, and being able to step back and look and come around. So resilience is, it to me does start with understanding that we have the power to choose. It also, I think, starts with having a level of confidence within ourselves to know that the way that we present in the world, whatever it may be, is very purposeful. That everybody's unique way of coming at the world and who they are is an important thread in the quilt. And, that's really easy to say, right? It's really easy to say, but when we're walking through normal life, there's so much judgment and societal pressure. And, I think your teacher, of which I'm sure you were a pretty powerful teacher for her too, really paused to say, wait a minute, this is one perspective. Let's look at this obstacle that you're facing and come at it from another perspective. So resilience is interesting. And I think it does have elements of choice, elements of understanding ourselves, elements of courage. It's not always easy. I'll briefly say this, and I don't know if you know this about me, but at 16, my father abandoned our family, and we became very food, shelter, insecure. We really were in a place where my mom and my brother and I had nothing, and I had a choice there too. Right? I had a choice to kind of step into homelessness, or I had a choice to look at that as a different opportunity. Now, granted, it took me a long time to do that and build some of the resilience, but again, a pretty large pothole in my life from which I am grateful I had the ability to choose and the courage to look at it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Life is all about perspective, isn't it?
I yes, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that the spaces that we live in are all interconnected, mind, body, soul, and the spaces that we live on at home. So I'm curious to dive into that, but I'm also curious to ask you, on top of that, the importance of diversity of thought, like we were just discussing, because I think that's a fundamental piece of growth if we're willing to embrace diversity of thought. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't agree with you more. If we can practice, let's just say even just you and I, right? Looking at the way that different things present themselves in our lives, or different individuals behave or act or make decisions. And we could look at that without judgment. If we could look at that without needing to label, if we could look at that without saying to ourselves, how does that affect me? And we could look at it in a way that says, how can I be in service, or how can I learn from that perspective? We might just live in a little bit more of a peaceful world. Yeah. Would you say?
Yeah, Colleen, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, and I started it 2.5 years ago, and I looked at the world and I said, in society today, there are so many factions that are pulling us apart. I wanted to create more bridges of unity and understanding, and I think conversation is a great way to do that. Would you agree with that?
So I would agree with that. And if you don't mind, I will put my human construct language on it, because
Yeah, absolutely. Go right
because
ahead.
because communication to me is kind of an interesting thing, because we have such limited language as humans. I mean, we have expansive language, but for the most part, we tend to use basic words. And it's funny, this pillow behind me right here is the feeling wheel. And in the middle are these like limited words: angry, sad, fearful, surprised. And I think sometimes when we're in communication with each other, if we don't listen and we don't choose to understand what the person is really saying, we can misunderstand in communication, right? We need to kind of be curious and want to know more. So I agree with you on that communication piece. And I think we have opportunity as humans to get more curious, to get more vulnerable, to get more genuine, to like want to be in in-depth conversations where we start to use language that really allows us to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. And Colleen, tell me, what do you think it means to live a transformational life? Because I also know you believe that we are all unique individuals and we create unique practices which really define our lives. So what does it mean to you to live a transformational life rooted in the core values that you set for yourself?
Yeah. Oh, transformation. It's such an interesting word. I think, I have already in this time in conversation with you learned and transformed because I came onto this podcast knowing a little bit about you, right? But also decided, and to answer your question about transformation, also decided I was coming on with an open mind, with this idea of I know nothing, right? And sure, we know some things, but really, when I say I know nothing, it's opening the idea of not prejudging, not assuming what's going to happen, not thinking I know what's going to unfold, and being okay in that uncertainty. And I think because all we have is the present moment, right? Most people have heard that. Like, all we have is right now. What's happened in the past is gone. What's happening in the future is only some sort of creation that we've created in our mind. So you and I only have what is here right now. And there's uncertainty in that because I don't necessarily know what you're going to ask me next. I don't know if the doorbell's going to ring or the dog's going to bark or if something on my body's going to itch. And if you extrapolate that into larger things, you're driving down the road and you don't know what things you're going to come into contact with or people that you're having interactions with that you might not know. That as you think about transformation, you have to be open to the idea that uncertainty holds unlimited possibility, that there's an infiniteness of opportunity there, and that as uncomfortable as uncertainty can be, it's really where transformation occurs. That's not to say you don't have goals. That's not to say you don't try to be in alignment with things that you're aiming for and growing towards. But I do think that it has a sense of comfort in the unknowing. I'll say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually leads nicely into my next question about, I also know you talk a lot about alignment and unity and creating spaces where we can be connected as a societal sort of being. So tell me about alignment, unity, and really building the social capital of life, if that makes sense.
Social capital of life. I'm gonna have to write that one down. I like that. Unity. Unity. So I first look, especially when I'm working with someone, at the unity of themselves. So where do they feel in alignment? Where do they feel in harmony with their mind, body, home, soul, so forth, right? That your own self. I think that the next step in that, gosh, there's so much to unpack there, but I'll move on from there because it's important to know, like, to stop and pause and know, like, how does it feel to live in my body? How does it feel to be um, in my mind, right? What's happening in those spaces where I can create better harmony with myself, or to use your word, unity. And then there is that unity that you're talking about societally with how do I plug into that? And that, I think, is really where the powerful work can be done, because when you know yourself the best, you show up in society as best for that society. Even though you might feel like you're the black sheep or you're different than everybody else, when you step into a space where you want to create a collective and you want to create community and we want to move humanity forward, acting like we think everybody else wants us to act, or switching our behavior, or not understanding really our belief systems, don't allow us to bring our unique gifts to the table. So it does anchor again for me, like you said, in the idea of what are the core values that I have? What is my purpose? How do I want to show up in the world? Giving yourself the permission to do that, and then stepping into that collective unity, that collective societal space, and holding your ground in that, in strength and bravery, to add value to the collective. I think when you the more aligned you are with your values, the more in harmony, the more united you are with your values, and the more you can bring that into society, the greater joy you experience and the greater joy that we as humanity experience.
Yeah, and to that point, Colleen, I know you're interested in making sure that your clients achieve sort of their long-term vision of your life. You tell me that you're not interested in helping them achieve temporary gains, but you're also interested in meeting people where they are and looking how they can grow their current strength. So I'm wondering if we can dive into that this morning.
Yeah. So I think that we move and buzz through life so fast that we miss some of the subtleness that is uniquely ours. And so because of the pace of life so often, maybe not for everybody, but most people I run into, and fair enough, I do live in Washington, D.C., the pace can be a little bit rapid. Um, but in that, we often stop and I think neglect ourselves and look at what we're actually doing, like how we actually feel. I mean, the number of people I know that at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I think my shoulder's been sore all day. They haven't even paused long enough to know that their shoulder hurts, right? It's like not something that's revealed until the end of the day when they actually stop and pause. I think that the more that people can stop and pause and recognize what's going on with some level of awareness in their life on the daily basis allows people to make changes in their lives that more directly affect what's important to them. And so I love a good short-term game, right? I love when I can help a client get out of their head for the moment, or maybe even physically come into a little bit of better health, make a shift in the way that they eat. But the path for me with individuals is to really help them understand and create their own best healing so that that becomes a lifetime journey where they're constantly curious, constantly looking to be aware of how they can, sure, get the short-term game, but also know that they're in a long-term game. And start to begin to take care of themselves. I mean, I love working with my clients, but I also feel the most successful when, after a certain period of time, they're like, I don't know if I need to see you that often, right? I kind of feel like I know what I need. And that evolves around how you're nourishing yourself, how you emotionally are feeling, how you're physically feeling, what your sleep is like, how often you're in nature, right? So building a toolkit for people so that they can evolve and adapt as life forces them to evolve and adapt, but to always be centered on their own wisdom and knowledge and healing.
Yeah, and to that point, Colleen, I'm a big believer in celebrating the wins in life, no matter how big or how small, and really building, like I said earlier, the social capital of life. Because, with the disability that I have, sometimes it's harder for me to build social connections outside of the bubble that I live in. So I use this podcast as an extension of that. So tell me about really uh, celebrating wins in life and really building up the social capital and how important that is when we talk about, like you saying, nourishing our bodies and ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Where should I, where do we add value to that? Yeah. The idea of celebrating what we have, I think, has been lost. I think that the majority of people are looking to, well, once I achieve this, then things will be good. Once this happens in my life, then I'll be happy. Once I make X amount of dollars, then I'll be able to have insert whatever they think that they need or they want. And I'm all for long-term goals, right? I'm all for accountability and creating abundance in life. And to your point, the social capital and adding that gain. I think that starts with a subtle shift of awareness around what you already have. And this has been exacerbated by the recent trip I just had to India, where most people don't have really anything. They're living on the street, bathing on the street. Um, what they have is less about some of the material things that I think so many of us look for. So they celebrate the fact that they can stand on the corner and take a shower. That's a celebration because they actually had the running water. And so our practices here in the United States or Canada or in other perhaps more civilized spaces, civilized isn't even the right word, but spaces where indoor plumbing and things like that are maybe available, is how can we miss out? Why are we missing out on celebrating the fact that I got up this morning, went for a walk, was able to have something nourishing, and take a shower and get to have this conversation with you? To me, these are highlights of my day. The simple places where we can be doing something nourishing for ourselves, and perhaps like you and I are, even if it's just with you and I, learning and growing and nourishing and being open to other perspectives, other ideas. So yeah, I think I might have gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the idea of us being able to celebrate is a perspective, right? Like, what are you choosing to celebrate? Are you choosing to celebrate every morning that you wake up and you have a dry space to live? I do. I'm grateful for some of those basic things. So to help people see some of the smaller pieces of that and celebrate what they have, I think is a core building block to being able to actually expand and potentially add on to what you might want that's beyond that.
Yeah,
And sorry if I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
oh no. Don't be sorry. I originally went to school for journalism, and one of the core things my coordinating professor would always tell me is that you go off on too many tangents. You explain things too much. So I totally.
We're together.
Yeah, I totally get you, and never apologize for giving an old journalist too much information. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And, Colin, I know that you're passionate about helping people sort of find what they're curious and creative about and help them be the co-creation of their own sort of life journey and embrace their uniqueness and help them shine in bigger and better spaces. So tell me about helping people really find what they're creative and passionate about because, for me, it's I always say if you find what you're passionate about, you don't work a day in your life, right?
Absolutely. I'm still working on that, by the way, although I feel a lot closer than I used to be. Just as like a few perhaps like consumable steps that someone might want to think about or consider if they're in a place where they're like, well, how do I start to do that? One of the things that I like to say is, well, what did you love to do as a child? What lit you up? Did you like to dance? Did you like to sing? What kind of things as a child, if you kind of were to go back in your memory, brought you some of your greatest joy? Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to do the same things, but some of the energy, like if dancing was something that brought you into a place of feeling whole and happy, why not reincorporate that into your life? So that's one way I start to kind of get curious and try to pull out of people what might be something they can incorporate into their life now. Another way is getting involved in things that you haven't done before. Just try stuff, right? Just try something new. Try a pottery class. Try journaling. Try reading books that are outside of maybe what you're normally reading. Kind of get curious. And then to give three, because I like odd numbers, another even to others, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, someone said to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to call you the queen of connecting." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I never really thought of myself that," right? So people that are seeing you from the outside have perspective, have insight into you in a way that you don't. And so asking people that you love and care about for that type of feedback or interesting conversation can be a way to get a little bit more curious about how to incorporate and look at some of the things that might be interesting to explore and make shifts in your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And Colleen, in the few minutes I have left with you this morning, I'm curious to ask you about your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
That's such a big question. Um, I'm doing the best I can every day to live by the things that I practice, or that I preach, rather, right? So the three things that I just offered up, I try to keep those in the forefront of my mind. And so if I had to have like a few words on my headstone, right? Or if someone was to write an obituary, I would hope that people saw me as someone that cared deeply about others, that was kind, that was non-judgmental, that was super curious, that was looking to learn at every opportunity, and expand my own understanding of the world. Um, and somebody that they trusted, whether that's on a personal level or someone that was coming to me to help co-create, and find their own passion and excitement. So I think it's really the word love, to be honest, Kevin. That people saw me as wanting to receive love and wanting to glow love, leaving every situation that I come into maybe perhaps a little bit brighter or a little bit better than when I first stepped in.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me finally, Colleen, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Probably the best way to reach me is on my website, which is www.subtle, SUBTLE, with a dash, shifts, SHIFTS.com. www.subtle-shifts.com. There's a 30-minute discovery call. I love connecting with people. You can set up some time on my calendar. If you reach out to me that way and sign up for my newsletter, I'm happy to send you a free ebook. I have a award-winning book that is about collective and unity and people's growth. And because I think you're so cool, Kevin, if there's anybody that's listening in your community, if that would support your community, shoot me an email and just drop Kevin's name, and I'll send you a free ebook, because Kevin's cool.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate you opening up about how we can make subtle shifts in our lives and how we can grow as people. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to sincerely thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, thank you for having me. Shine, shine, shine bright, my friend.